I'm 74 years old, and I shared a bed with a woman for 4 decades without ever sharing my heart. People think loneliness comes from being alone. They're wrong. It comes from lying to yourself. Every single day. I'm sitting at the same kitchen table I bought in 1983. The wood is scratched. The chair creaks when I shift my weight. The house is quiet now. Too quiet. My wife is gone. Not passed away. Just gone from my life. And what haunts me isn't her absence. It's the truth I finally admitted too late. That I was married for 40 years and never truly loved her. This isn't a story about blame. It's a confession. And maybe a warning. The past. Before the mistake. I was 28 when I married her. Her name was Sarah. It was 1979. I had just landed a stable job at a manufacturing firm outside Cleveland. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. And back then, that was everything. I grew up watching my father come home exhausted, hands blackened with grease, never once complaining. Love wasn't something he talked about. Providing was love. Staying was love. So when people asked me if I loved Sarah, I said yes without thinking. Because she was kind. Because she said yes when I proposed. Because it felt like the next step. Not a choice. Our wedding smelled like cheap flowers and cigarette smoke drifting in from the parking lot. Her mother cried. My friend slapped me on the back and said, "You did good." I remember standing at the altar, adjusting my tie, thinking, this is what a man does. Sarah was gentle, quiet in a way that didn't demand much. She laughed at my jokes. She kept the house neat. She never asked hard questions, and I mistook that silence for peace. In those early years, we played our roles well. Sunday dinners, holiday photos, neighbors waving from their lawns. At night, we'd lie side by side, her back turned to me, the ceiling fan humming above us. I told myself that passion fades for everyone, that love settles into something calmer, that wanting more was childish. I was proud of how steady our life looked. I wore that pride like armor. The turning point. The choice. The moment I should have listened to myself came quietly. No shouting, no dramatic exit. It was 1985. I was 34. I had just come home late from work. The house smelled like overcooked pasta. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, waiting. She looked tired, older than she should have. She said, "Do you ever feel like we're just roommates?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because laughter was easier than truth. I told her she was overthinking, that life was busy, that things would get better. She nodded, always nodding. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the dark and felt something claw at my chest. A voice I didn't recognize. This isn't enough, but I pushed it down. I told myself leaving would make me the villain. That staying was the honorable thing. A few years later, I met someone at work. Her name doesn't matter. She listened when I spoke. Really listened. I felt seen in a way that scared me. Nothing happened, but something woke up. I remember driving home one evening, gripping the steering wheel, thinking, is this what I've been missing? When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah's car was already there. The porch light was on, and I made my decision. I chose comfort over honesty, stability over truth. I told myself wanting more was selfish. That was the day I locked myself into a life I didn't want, and convinced myself it was love. The consequences, realization. Years pass faster than you expect. One day you're 40, then 50, then suddenly your knees hurt when you stand. We had a son, Michael. Holding him for the first time cracked something open in me, a fierce, terrifying love. The kind that doesn't ask questions. I loved my son deeply, and that made the emptiness in my marriage even louder. Sarah and I functioned well. We coordinated schedules, paid bills, attended school events together, but we stopped touching, stopped asking, stopped seeing each other. Our conversations became transactions. Did you pay the electric? Michael needs new shoes. At night, I stayed up later. She went to bed earlier. Silence filled every room. I told myself this was normal, that marriages weren't supposed to feel alive forever. But sometimes, late at night, I'd sit alone in the living room, the television flickering without sound, and feel an ache I couldn't name. It wasn't desire, it was grief. Grief for a life unlived. In 2009, Sarah's mother passed away. I watched my wife cry in a way I had never seen before. Raw, unfiltered. She reached for me, and for a brief moment, I almost reached back, but I didn't know how. We had gone too long without being real. It felt like touching a stranger. She pulled away, and something in her closed for good. The final realization came quietly. On our 40th anniversary, we went out to dinner. Same restaurant as always, same booth. She raised her glass and said, "We did okay, didn't we?" Her voice was hopeful, almost pleading. I wanted to tell her the truth, that I was sorry, that she deserved more than my presence. But I smiled and said yes. That lie still wakes me up at night. The wisdom. Present day. Sarah left 2 years later. No fight, no accusations. She said, "I don't want to die feeling invisible." I didn't stop her, because I knew she was right. Now I'm 74. The house echoes. Michael calls every Sunday. He's a good man. Sometimes I wonder what he learned from watching us. What silence I passed down. I've had time to think. Too much time. Here's what I know now. Love isn't supposed to be safe. It's supposed to be honest. Staying isn't noble if it costs you your soul. And leaving isn't selfish if it saves someone else from years of quiet pain. I thought avoiding conflict made me kind. It made me absent. I thought commitment meant endurance. It also means courage. If I could speak to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him to leave. I'd tell him to speak, to risk being seen, to stop confusing comfort with love. Because the greatest regret isn't heartbreak. It's never knowing what might have been. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, don't ignore it. Time doesn't slow down. It speeds up. Say the hard thing. Ask the dangerous question. Choose honesty while you still can. I can't get those years back, but you still have yours. If this story stayed with you, share it and stay close. There's still time to live differently.